Hello everybody. Welcome to the training video for the Conservice Payment Processing Software. My name is Shauna Karen and I'm the Director of the Training Department here at Conservice. Today I will share with you some instructions on using the software. To open the software and scan payments, just double-click the icon on your desktop. Once the software opens, you will see the login window. From here, you will enter your Conservice username and password. It's the same username and password you used to log on to our website. So if you already have that login information, then that's what you'll use for this software as well. Once you've entered your username and password, click Login, and then you'll see the main area of the scanner interface. Up on the upper left corner of the screen, you should see your property name. If you don't, you will need to contact your Conservice account representative right away so we can get that fixed for you. Also, there are some icons over here on the upper right-hand corner of the screen. The first one is a settings icon. If you click on that icon, you will be able to control some advanced settings. But in day-to-day operation, you shouldn't need to do much on this screen. Sometimes when you log into the software, you will see the gears icon with a little red exclamation point next to it. This just indicates that you're on an older version of the software and you will need to update that software before you can move on. You should be prompted to update automatically, but you can also click the settings icon and then click Check for Updates. If there are any updates available, you will be directed on how to download and install those updates. The other icons on the main page provide you access to some training resources. If you click on this question mark icon, you will see a help document with all the information you need to know to use the software. If you have questions after this training, you can simply open up that document and read through those help topics. The third icon, this media player icon, allows you to download a shorter video tutorial for processing checks through the system. If you click Yes, a browser will launch on your computer and that video will download. It will take a minute or two for that to happen before you can watch it. It's about 8 minutes long, but it's a nice condensed version of what we're going to go through today. So let's get started processing our first batch of payments. To do that, I'm going to click the Enter Payments button here. The first step to processing a batch of payments is to type in the amount of each payment on this screen. You should always type the amounts here before running the payments through the scanner. We'll go through this entire process a few times in this training, but for our first batch, we are going to scan just 3 checks from residents. The first step is to type in the amount of the first payment in this box right here. Once you've done that, hit the Enter key on your keyboard to bring up another line to enter the next amount. After entering that amount, you'll hit Enter to bring up another line to enter the third amount. Then click Enter once again. At this point, we need to activate the scanner and tell it that we're ready to start scanning. Just click the Scan Payments button on the bottom right corner of the screen. Now load the payments into the scanner and they will scan. Once they have all successfully gone through the scanner, you will click the Stop Scanning button on the bottom right corner of the screen. We'll now re-enter the amounts of the payments to confirm the correct amounts. At this point in the process, it's a good time to compare the 2 amounts that are written on the payment to make sure that they match. If they are not the same, then you will need to use the amount that is written in the longer line here. That is the legal amount. So I'm going to simply type in the amount of the payment in this box. I can then either click this next box or hit Enter on my keyboard to bring up the next image. Once I've entered the amount of that last payment, the system will ask me if I'm ready to move on to the next step, and I will just click Yes to continue. Here we can see our 3 payments listed, and everything has a nice blue background, which is good. A little bit later, we will see some situations where there's some issues we need to resolve, and in these cases, you will see a pink background. So as long as everything is blue, we're in good shape. If the check or the money order is coming from a resident, you'll leave Resident selected here. If the check is instead coming from a housing authority or a rent assistance program, you'll need to change this to housing instead of resident. If the payment is a deposit, you'll need to check the box for deposit. You'll want to be sure to get both of these selections correct so that the payment will be applied to the correct accounting journal. For this first batch, we are going to go ahead and assume all these payments are from residents, so we'll keep residents selected here. We'll also assume that none of them are deposits. I'll simply click Continue to move on to the next step of the process. We will now apply these payments to specific residents and units or vendors. Jump over to this search box and begin typing the first name, the last name, or the unit number for the payment. All of the possible matches will display as you type. When you see the right one, simply click on it from the drop-down list to populate that resident. Over time, the system will begin to remember who's made payments, and based on their account number, those residents will be populated automatically when you get to this point. If the payment is from a vendor, the system can handle that as well. In the search box, you will simply scroll down to the end to see the different temp categories. You can also choose temp from this list, and then just those categories will be listed there. Choose the category that best represents the payment you're processing, and keep in mind that there is an other miscellaneous income category, and in many cases that may be the best option for you. So then just choose it and you're ready to go. Once you're ready, go ahead and press Continue to move on to the next step. To finish up the batch, we will go ahead and press Import Batch. At this time, the system is sending the data from the scanned payments to Conservice for processing. Depending on the size of the batch and your internet connection speed, this could take a minute or two to happen, so just sit tight and wait for it to finish. Once that happens, you will see a results window here, and that tells you that in this case the 3 payments were successfully uploaded and the corresponding 3 images were also uploaded. That is exactly what we want to see at this point of the process. I'm going to press OK, and now we can see the batch number listed here. We can also see the time which these payments will be pushed into your OneSite system. That happens on a 15-minute cycle. So the longest you should have to wait for that to occur is 15 minutes. After then, the payments will begin to show up in your OneSite system. And that's it. That's the process for scanning payments from the beginning to the end. So I'm going to go ahead and click Finish, and we'll find ourselves back at the main window of the software. I'd like to start another batch now with a few more payments to show you a couple of situations you might encounter as you are scanning payments into the system. To get started, click the Enter Payments button. This is the screen where you will enter in the amounts of the payments, so I'm going to type the amount of the first payment and hit Enter on my keyboard, and then type the amount of the second payment, hit Enter again, and I'm just going to start with these 2 payments in this batch. So I'm now going to press the Scan Payments button on the bottom right corner of the screen, and then load the checks into the scanner to get those scanned. Once they've gone through the scanner, I'll hit the Stop Scanning button on the screen and then verify the amounts of the payments here. So here we are at the step where we see our payments listed. You will notice at this time the payment number 2 has a pink background, which means there's an issue or something that needs to be resolved before we can move on. Anytime that happens, you can look over here at the right-hand side and you'll see an explanation for the situation. In this case, we can see that the amounts that were entered in the first step and the second step don't match, so the system doesn't know which one is the correct amount to use. I'm going to go ahead and click this eye icon right here, and that will bring up the payment image. This is really helpful to pull up and look at so you can review what the actual amount is. So I'm just going to fix that and close this payment image, and then we've got that nice blue background and we're ready to move on. Let's say that you're in the middle of processing this batch of payments and a resident walks in your door and they have a payment for you and you think, well, I'm processing payments, I may as well put this one in the same batch. It's easy to add payments. At this point, you'll simply click this Add Payments button here, and that will take you back to the first step where you will enter the amount of the payment with your keyboard, hit Enter, and then scan the payment and run it through your scanner. Click the Stop Scanning button and then verify the amount of the payment. And you will see that we are back to this step of the process with that third payment added here. That last payment that I just processed is actually a money order. So let's take a look at that. With a money order, the system is going to pull the check number or the identification number for this payment from this bottom line of numbers you find on the image of the payment you scanned. When we are dealing with money orders, that number is often not a unique identifying number. For example, MoneyGram will use 90 for all of their money orders. So what that means is that these payments are entered into your OneSite system. If we leave it like that, then all of the checks in OneSite will have a check number of 90, which isn't very helpful for us. So anytime you're dealing with a money order, you're going to need to change this number from the number that was scanned to the identifying number that's on the face of the money order itself. In this case, it's over here on the left-hand side running up and down. Sometimes it might be up here in the upper right-hand corner or someplace else on that payment. But to change it, you simply click into this field and type the numbers that you see on the actual face of the money order. Once we've done that, we're ready to move on to the next step. At this step, we will go ahead and assign those payments out to residents and units or vendors. I also want to point out that it is possible to assign a payment to an applicant. In order for that to happen correctly, you need to understand a little bit about how we are pulling the resident data from your OneSite system into our system. 2 times a day, we actually go into your OneSite system and essentially take a snapshot of all of your resident data. We will load that into our system so the scanner software will know what residents are in which units at your property. So let's think about a specific situation. Let's say that an applicant comes into your office at 10 o'clock in the morning and you process that applicant and you take a payment from them for their deposit. The next thing you are going to do is go into your OneSite system and add that applicant into your OneSite system and associate that applicant with a specific unit. If that applicant isn't assigned to a specific unit, you will not be able to scan any payments to them. You could, however, go to our website and submit a credit card, debit card, or EFT payment for that deposit. If you immediately try to use the CPS system to scan that payment for the applicant before the applicant has been associated to a unit in your OneSite system, you will not see that applicant name in the list here. So what you need to keep in mind is that if you enter or make changes to the resident data in your OneSite system in the morning, you're going to need to wait until the afternoon before you can scan any payments to applicants or residents that may have been changed in your OneSite system. If you make changes on OneSite in the afternoon, you're going to have to wait until the following morning to scan payments to those residents. So we take those snapshot views overnight as well as about in the middle of the day. So as long as you wait for those snapshots to update, then you should be fine to scan a payment to an applicant. All right, once I've got these all applied, I'll go ahead and click Continue to move on to the last step, which is to import the batch. Here we see that we have the results we're looking for. The 3 payments were successfully uploaded and their images were uploaded, so I'm going to click OK. If you want to go out and see that information in our website, you can do that. The information would be available immediately. Also at this time, the system will email you with a summary of the contents of the batch that you scanned. The email that you get will look something like this. It will be from Conservice Payment Scanner, checkscan@conservice.com. And then you will see a list of all the payments that were in the batch of what you just submitted, as well as the unit number, the amount of the payment, and the check number. This example we're looking at right now does not correspond with the batch we just scanned. It's just a sample of a previous email that was sent. But you will know that the payments have reached Conservice when you receive this email back from us. And so you should also get an email like this every time you scan. If you don't receive that email, then that might mean we don't have your correct email address in our system. If that's the case, then you'll need to contact your Conservice account representative right away, and we'll go ahead and get you set up to receive those emails going forward. I'm going to click Finish, which brings us back to the main window of the software again. I'm going to do one more batch with you today, so I'm going to go ahead and click Enter Payments one more time. I'll type the amount of the payments here until I get them all entered. Once I've got all those payments entered, I'm going to click the Scan Payments button to initiate the scanner. I'll load these payments in the scanner and get them all scanned. Once they've all gone through the scanner, you'll go ahead and click the Stop Scanning button and then verify the amounts that you see on the images here and move on to the next step. Here we can see that payment number 2 has a little bit of an issue. We can tell it has an issue because it has a pink background, and this time we can see that it's because the account number has errors. If we look here in the check number field, we can see that there was actually no number picked up during the scan. And when I click this plus sign, we can see that we don't have a number for the routing number or the account number either. So for whatever reason, the scanner wasn't able to read that information from this payment. I'm going to click on this eye icon right here to open the payment image. Normally the scanner reads this ink at the bottom of the check, where these funny looking numbers are, and picks up the information to populate these fields. But for whatever reason, on this particular payment, the scanner wasn't able to read that data. It's not a problem. It doesn't mean that we can't scan this check. It just means that we're going to need to manually enter in this information. So to do that, you're always going to want to pull the check number from the upper right-hand corner of the payment. The routing number is always going to be the first 9 digits on the bottom left corner. So the numbers between these two funny-looking symbols right here. I'm going to click in this field and type in the numbers that I see. The account number is going to be the second set of numbers between these two symbols. I'll go ahead and click in this field and type the number that I see there. Once I've done that, you can see that this background turned blue and we're ready to move on. Now we are going to assume that this last payment I processed is from a housing authority or rent assistance program. I'm going to go ahead and choose housing for this before I move on to the next step. I'll now associate these payments with specific residents by using this search box to type the resident's name or unit number. Remember, this last one is where we want to apply the amounts from this check out to multiple residents. To do that, I'm going to click this plus sign. It will bring up a separate row for us down here, and I will enter the amount that is going to be applied to the first resident, and then I will choose that resident from the list, and then I'll click the plus sign to bring up another row. And here I can enter in an amount to be applied to an additional resident, and I'll just continue doing this until I apply all the funds from this check to a unit and a resident at the property. So now this total amount has been divided up among these residents, and once that happens correctly, the background turns blue and we're ready to move on. There are a couple of situations where you will not be able to use the system to scan a housing authority check. The first is if there is money on the check that needs to be applied to a resident who's moved out. You will not be able to process that payment and scan it through the system. Instead, you will need to take that check to the bank and process it manually. The reason for that is we don't have the ability to choose a past resident over here on the list. So once you move a resident out of one site, then you will not be able to choose that resident and apply a scanned payment to the resident. The other situation where you won't be able to use the system to scan a housing authority check is if the housing authority is taking money back from a resident. In that case, you will need to take that payment to the bank to be deposited manually. And the reason is because you won't be able to enter any negative amounts over here. So we can't apply a negative amount to a resident. So as long as the housing authority check has all the money going to residents who currently live in the community, and they are positive amounts, you should be able to scan that through the system successfully. I'll go ahead and click Continue to move on to the next step and go ahead and import that batch. So here we can see the results that we want to see, and those payments were successfully uploaded and the images were uploaded. So we'll go ahead and click on OK to finish up and close the batch. Now that you've seen how to process payments using the scanner system, you should be ready to scan payments at your community. If you have any issues, problems, or questions with batches you've scanned through the system, the first thing you should do is email checkscansupport@capstonemanagement.com. The folks at Capstone will monitor those emails and either resolve those issues if they can, or they will push them to Conservice for resolution if necessary. So again, if you have problems, questions, or issues with scanned batches, email checkscansupport@capstonemanagement.com. Thank you.